Speaking of Trump, here is the big news of the day. Trump pled the fifth multiple times in a deposition earlier today.
Former President Trump took the fifth today at his deposition with the New York Attorney General's office.
The probe is part of a long-running civil investigation which began in 2019 into his company's real estate dealings. CBS 2's Naomi Ruckham live outside the AG's Manhattan office with the latest. Naomi?
Maurice and Christine, legal experts agree that pleading the fifth was likely the best option for the former president as he faces...
Of course it was.
...and could dig himself into deeper trouble. Here in New York, the allegations are that he made his golf courses and other real estate seem more valuable than they actually were. Former President...
And of course he did that.
Way to his deposition at the New York Attorney General's office, where he declined to answer questions under oath. Mr. Trump released a statement about invoking his right against self-incrimination, saying in part, when your family, your company, and all the people in your orbit have become the targets of an unfounded, politically motivated witch hunt, you have no choice.
In the past, he'd said only guilty people plead the fifth. What he's trying to do is diffuse one of those costs, which is making him look bad, making him look guilty.
Well, he is guilty.
Like a hypocrite.
The civil investigation, led by Democrat Letitia James, is looking into whether the Trump Organization inflated the values of multiple real estate properties to get favorable loans and tax deductions. The AG's office says it's collected substantial evidence that could support a lawsuit against Mr. Trump or his company. Former President Trump has also been lashing out about a separate federal probe into whether he illegally took classified material from the White House when he left office. In an extraordinary move Monday, the FBI searched the former president's home in Mar-a-Lago, seizing boxes and paper documents, some of which are believed to contain classified information. President Trump's lawyers have suggested, without proof, the FBI may have planted evidence, and Republican allies are calling for transparency.
This raised.
Yeah, we're gonna go deeper into the supposed raid here in just a little bit. But first, the New York AG may seek corporate death penalty for Trump Tower and all of his golf courses. This is according to a legal expert. This is just somebody pontificating. Former President Donald Trump may lose the crown jewels of the heir's corporate empire if New York Attorney General Letitia James moves to invoke New York's corporate death penalty against the Trump Organization, according to a new report. On Wednesday, Trump announced he would refuse to answer questions in James's civil investigation into the company during a deposition that lasted more than 5 hours. The investigation focuses on whether the Trump Organization essentially kept two sets of books. He allegedly would lowball values to avoid taxes, while highballing values to secure loans. In the coming days, or in the coming weeks or even days, the AG is expected to file a massive, long-threatened enforcement action, essentially a multi-hundred-page lawsuit against the Trumps and his Manhattan-based business. Business Insider reported on Wednesday. Fines and back taxes, however, may be the least of what Trump's facing. James has signaled she will also seek the dissolution of the business itself under New York's so-called corporate death penalty, a law that allows the AG to seek to dissolve businesses that operate in a persistently fraudulent or illegal manner. Well, all of Trump's businesses certainly fit that definition. The FBI seized 15 boxes from Mar-a-Lago. Here's the inside scoop from Inside Edition.
On his way to be questioned about his family's business dealings. The deposition comes a day after that bombshell raid on Mar-a-Lago. Now comes a report claiming FBI agents also searched Melania Trump's closet. Les Trent has the very latest.
How do you feel, Mr. Trump?
Donald Trump took the fifth today, refusing to answer questions under oath about his business practices.
Former President Trump was driven in a motorcade through rush hour traffic to the office of New York's...
Why does that feel very Nixon-y when he does that?
An hour later, he announced that he had given the same answer to every question.
I declined to answer the questions under the rights and privileges accorded every citizen under the Constitution, he said in a statement. I once asked, if you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? Now I know the answer.
Oh my God.
Scoffed at his taking the fifth.
It's especially notable given his repeated criticism of people who take the fifth.
The mob takes the fifth. Taking the fifth, I think it's disgraceful. Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Horrible.
And we're learning new details about that FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago.
There's more to the Fifth Amendment than just that, by the way.
Melania Trump's wardrobe. Agents reportedly took away 15 boxes of documents, including letters from North Korean tyrant Kim Jong-un and the letter from President Obama that Trump told ABC's David Muir he was especially proud of.
I doubt too many of them were written.
Meanwhile, one of Trump's attorneys is making serious allegations against FBI agents.
And quite honestly, I'm concerned that they may have planted something. You know, at this point, who knows?
CBS
Bullshit.
correspondent Major Garrett is outside Mar-a-Lago.
The suggestion that evidence was planted is merely to inject into the court of public opinion something that there is no evidentiary basis for. But it increases the sense of political division and the sense of political animosity that Trump supporters have to anyone investigating former President Trump.
Many people believe that this raid...
Now, it would seem that the FBI purposely selected the time that they did when he was out of town because they didn't want a media firestorm. You're talking about, Cicero is talking about photo ops over here in the Twitch chat. And that was one of the things that the FBI was cognizant of. They didn't want to give him a photo op. They literally said that. I think we're going to get into that here in a piece that we're going to pull up here in just a second.
Could not have been just about documents and that it is somehow related to January 6th.
One would have to assume that for the Justice Department to take this step without precedent in American history, it has to be about something more than just a disagreement about the handling of presidential records.
The Fuhrer is a boon to the late-night comics.
I feel bad for those agents. Sir, I finished searching the cabinet full of empty chicken.
I hadn't even watched Colbert.
Should I go next? Please don't say the bathroom. Please don't say the bathroom. Please don't say the bathroom.
In the wake of the raid, FBI agents as well as U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Chris Wray are receiving death threats online. There are reports underway to increase their security.
I love there was somebody that was like, whoever appointed Chris Wray needs to be investigated. It was Trump. it was Trump. The FBI was apparently very cautious. Law enforcement had serious concerns. Reporter reveals FBI gained access to Mar-a-Lago surveillance footage. A new report is shedding more light on the Federal Bureau of Investigation's findings during the search of former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. According to CNN, new details have emerged about the FBI gaining access to Mar-a-Lago surveillance footage during Wednesday's segment of CNN's At This Hour. There were new details about FBI's Florida home. Bouldon said CNN has learned from investigators that the former president or his team did not return the government documents that were taken when they were left at the White House. This isn't new information. The CNN correspondent went on to share details about the surveillance videos the FBI gained access to at the former president's estate. So we also know in this investigation that federal authorities subpoenaed and received access to Mar-a-Lago surveillance videos so that they were able to understand the security around these documents in recent weeks. On top of that, sources tell Pamela Brown, Caitlin Collins, and I that they weren't being entirely truthful with them in recent months as law enforcement was working on the problem where Trump still had these presidential records in his possession. So on the Trump side of things, we now understand that advisors around him thought the investigation until essentially Monday was stalled out, that it had gone silent. She also noted that the angle Trump's team may take in an effort to defend him. Now their argument, we believe, will be that Trump didn't keep documents with national security secrets at Mar-a-Lago because when he was president, they're saying he declassified them. I've seen right-wingers make that argument like, well, he had the power to declassify him. He may have fucked himself when he signed this law. Citizen Trump may have broken a law that President Trump made a felony. There are not many people who know exactly why FBI agents searched Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate on Monday. The FBI knows, certainly, and the former president and his attorneys probably have a good sense as well, given that they saw the search warrant. Everyone else is operating on what's been revealed by Trump's team and public reporting. The FBI search was largely or entirely a function of the investigation into Trump's retention of documents after leaving the White House. I'm sorry, guys. I tried to snooze the ads over on Twitch. I missed it. My apologies. We know that he did, by his own admission, this year a number of boxes of material were turned over to the National Archives. Included in that material were some that were classified. On Monday, the FBI removed another dozen boxes, with speculation rampant that more of that material was similarly restricted. If Trump is found to have violated federal law in removing and retaining classified documents without authorization, he could be convicted of a felony punishable by 5 years in prison, and that conviction would be a felony carrying that punishment because of a law signed by President Donald Trump. Trump's 2016 campaign was intertwined with a similar question. His Democratic opponent, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, had been found to have operated a private email server that she used for official business, including, the FBI determined, some that was classified. Trump and his allies pushed for Clinton to face criminal charges, but in July 2016, FBI Director James B. Comey announced that the FBI wouldn't seek an indictment. Trump was furious, but he won anyway. During his first year in office, a central tool used for surveillance by the intelligence community, Section 702 of the FISA Amendments Act, was set to expire. Shortly before it did, Congress passed an extension of the authority for another 5 years. But that didn't come without turmoil. Trump came into office angry at the intelligence community for revealing to reporters that it believed Russia had interfered in the 2016 election. He excoriated intelligence agencies on Twitter and continued to do so as the contours of the investigation into that interference became clear. On the day that the House was set to vote on the reauthorization, Trump complained on Twitter, "House votes on controversial FISA Act today. This is the act that may have been used with the help of the discredited and phony dossier to so badly surveil and abuse the Trump campaign by the previous administration and others." The tweet freaked out advocates of the extension. A few hours later, he tweeted his support, and it passed. What became law was S-139. It had been introduced by Senator Orrin Hatch as the Rapid DNA Act of 2017, but sometimes Congress hollows out existing legislation and replaces it entirely with other legislation to move the process forward more quickly. So S-139 was replaced with House Resolution 4478, which extended Section 702 for another 5 years. It also had a stipulation editing 18 U.S. Code 1924. Whoever being an officer, employee, contractor, or consultant of the United States, and by virtue of his office, employment, position, or contract, becomes possessed of documents or materials containing classified information of the United States, knowingly removes such documents or materials without authority and with the intent to retain such documents or materials at an unauthorized location, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for not more than 1 year or both. With Trump signing of S-139 into law, that became shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for not more than 5 years or both, and with that it became a felony.
Do you think we're stupid? You think we're fools?
Apparently, there was an informant letting the FBI know exactly where Trump was hiding documents. And you've got to wonder, if he was hiding documents, for what purpose? Did he plan on selling information? Blackmailing people? What was the reason for him hiding documents? According to Newsweek, published this morning, an informer told the FBI what docs Trump was hiding and where. The raid on Mar-a-Lago was based largely on information from an FBI confidential human source, one who was able to identify what classified documents former President Trump was still hiding, and even the location of those documents. This is according to two senior government officials telling Newsweek. The officials who have direct knowledge of the FBI's deliberations and were granted anonymity in order to discuss sensitive matters said the raid of Donald Trump's Florida residence was deliberately timed to occur when the former president was away. Yes, you can't run for president if you were found guilty of a federal crime, but a trial like that would take years. FBI decision makers in Washington and Miami thought that denying the former president a photo opportunity or a platform for which to grandstand would lower the profile of the event, says one of the sources. The effort to keep the raid low-key failed. Instead, it prompted a furious response from GOP leaders and Trump supporters. What a spectacular backfire, says the justice official. I know that there is much speculation out there that this is a political persecution, but it really is the best and the worst of the bureaucracy in action. They wanted to punctuate the fact that this was a routine law enforcement action stripped of any political overtones, and yet they got exactly the opposite. Both senior government officials say the raid was scheduled with no political motive. The FBI's sole intent on recovering highly classified documents that were illegally removed from the White House. Preparations to conduct the search on an operation began weeks ago, but in planning the date and time, the FBI Miami field office and Washington headquarters were focused on the former president's scheduled return to Florida from his residences in New York and New Jersey. They were seeking to avoid a media circus, says the second source. So even though everything made sense bureaucratically and the FBI feared that the documents might be destroyed, they also created the very firestorm they sought to avoid in ignoring the fallout. Speaking of people around Trump being able to talk, Trump's 2016 campaign staff can now talk about what they saw. Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign has released former staffers from key sections of a non-disclosure agreement, freeing them to talk about their experience, good or bad. The move was disclosed in a court filing this week as Trump campaign lawyers angle to end a 2020 lawsuit challenging parts of NDAs that barred former staffers from disparaging Trump and his campaign and sharing other information about their work. A federal judge in Manhattan last year declared those confidentiality and non-disparagement clauses invalid and unenforceable as applied to the former staffer who brought the case, Jessica Denson. Denson's lawyers have since moved ahead with efforts to get the suit certified as a class action. On Tuesday, campaign attorney Jared Blumetti filed a letter with the declaration signed in June by a campaign committee official stating that they would not ever enforce or attempt to enforce any confidentiality or non-disparagement provisions contained in any written agreements signed by any employees, independent contractors, or volunteers who worked for the campaign on the 2016 presidential election. So expect a deluge of books and exclusive interviews coming your way of people in and around the 2016 Donald Trump presidential campaign. Look forward to that. Cicero says a confidential human source equals not a ghost.